My name is Eva. I am a technical support engineer with Qlik. I have been with the company for 2 years. My main focus is Qlik NPrinting in the infrastructure and deployment functional areas. So in today's session, we will actually talk about the extension details with the Qlik Sense on-demand reporting extension. We will also talk about the requirements necessary in order to configure the button, any unsupported methods and limitations. I will go through a live demonstration of how to configure the button in your environment. After, we will go through any troubleshooting tools that might occur when setting the button up and how to overcome these error messages, a summary, and followed by a Q&A where I can answer any questions that you may have about configuring this. So what is the Qlik Sense Enterprise On-Demand Reporting and where can I find it? Qlik NPrinting basically allows you to run reports on demand. It is included in the Qlik Sense dashboard bundle. The version requirements are Qlik Sense November 2018 or later, as well as Qlik NPrinting November 2018 or later. Qlik Sense and Qlik NPrinting must use HTTPS, and the trusted root CA authority must be installed. NPrinting private key should have the password removed. NPrinting Web Console admin settings on demand is where you would add your trusted origins. You would add the Qlik NPrinting and Qlik Sense proxy server addresses. JWT and Qlik Sense NPrinting on demand and SAML with Qlik Sense NPrinting on demand are currently unsupported. Also, any extensions that are downloaded from GitHub or a third party are unsupported. The general limitations are the Qlik Sense app field selections must also be included on the Qlik NPrinting report template. Conflicting filters in Qlik NPrinting versus Qlik Sense will cause filter errors. Here I will take you through a live demo on how to set this extension up with Qlik Sense and Qlik NPrinting. We have already installed Qlik Sense on a separate vApp, but just to show, this is where you would go ahead and obtain the extension. You would select Install Supported Extension Bundles and select the Dashboard Bundle. On this virtual machine, we already have Qlik NPrinting April 2019 installed. It is important to note that Qlik NPrinting Server, Engine, and Designer are all on the same version. This can be verified by going into your control panel, Programs and Features. And as you can see, all three versions are both on the April 2019 release, Server, Engine, and Designer. Next, I'll show you how to basically ensure that your certificates are using SSL to ensure that you're using HTTPS. A good rule of thumb is when you open NPrinting and you see that the web console shows this connection is not private message, this will not allow the Qlik Sense extension to work properly. So you need to make sure that your certificates do in fact have the SSL. Basically, I will go through the process on how to retrieve a .crt and key file from a certificate PFX file that can be used with Qlik NPrinting. Here we have some generic certificates that I can basically show you how to go through this process. The one requirement is to ensure that you have OpenSSL installed. We pre-installed this on the virtual server. So I'll go through the process of basically doing the conversion. So the first step is to basically create a public key using the third-party certificate that's acquired from a trusted root authority. So I will go ahead and paste this command in. It will ask you for the import password. And then if it takes you back to this prompt, you know that this step was successful. In order to find out which commands to run, there is a Qlik Knowledge article on how to convert the certificate for NPrinting in order to use HTTPS SSL in the web console and our newsstand. This article number is 43517. Basically, this goes through the process of the requirements needed for the certificate and all the commands that you would need to run in command prompt for the conversion process. So the second command that we would actually run actually does the private key for using the third-party certificate. Again, the certificates that I'm using are generic for Qlik Server 3 to ensure that the NPrinting is secure. So we will hit enter, and again the import password and the PEM password phrase, and then verifying again. And again, you'll know that you typed everything in correctly if you get back to the command prompt, so that is a good rule of thumb. The last command that we run actually will remove the password from the private key because if you remember from the presentation, NPrinting cannot have a password. So we will basically go ahead and grab that last command, which is here. And we'll enter the passphrase again. And if everything is done correctly, we will open our NP cert folder that was created in the beginning, and you'll see that it created a .crt and .key file. The next step would be to actually move these files into the newsstand and webstand proxy. So if we just copy these files, you would navigate to the C Program Data NPrinting folder. First, you could select the newsstand proxy and paste them here. And then we'll go back and select the web console proxy and paste them into this directory. The next step is to edit the .config file to ensure that NPrinting is looking at the proper certificate. You will uncomment out the http.ssl equals true line. And then you will also uncomment out the location of the SSL key and cert locations. Just remember that your .crt and .key files are named correctly. Here we're just using the generic Qlik Server 3 certificate file. So obviously for your organization, these names would be a little bit varied. So that would be one thing to verify that those files are named correctly, and then just ensure that you're able to save that file. We'll also do the same thing for newsstand proxy. We will open the config file and uncomment out the http.ssl equals true, and then uncomment out the SSL certificate, CRT, and key locations to use the Qlik Server 3 certificate.crt.key. And then you would need to restart your Qlik NPrinting web engine service to ensure that it is now looking at the proper certificates. So we will go ahead and navigate to our services and just simply restart this service. So now we can go ahead and open the web console. Now you might be thinking, why is this still showing the not secure message? The problem is the desktop icon actually uses the host name and not the fully qualified domain name. So what I'm going to do is just edit this address. Our certificate is actually using qlikserver3.domain.local. So I'm just going to go ahead and type this in and hit enter. And as you can see, HTTPS is now working as it should. We are no longer getting an insecure message. So we can go ahead and log in to the web console. Okay, so the first thing to do is just ensure that the user you're logged in with does have rights to create and run the on-demand reports. For my web console, I only have the one user, but if we click on this admin and look at the roles, I am currently just assigned to the administrator option. What you can actually do is check to see what permissions this item has by going to Admin Security Roles and clicking on Administrator. And then if we scroll down, we can see here that this admin is allowed to create on-demand reports. Now, in your organization, you might have a lot of different roles. So if you want to create a role just for creating on-demand reports for your users, that is fine. But just make sure that the user does exist in NPrinting and has this privilege. Okay, so what we will actually do now is basically create an app from scratch. And I do have Qlik since April 2019 pre-installed on a separate server, Qlik Server 2. So I am going to access this just in the same window just to make things a bit easier so we can see everything in the same place. So I am going to log in as an admin. And here is my Qlik Sense Hub. So the first step to getting this extension to work is to creating an app in your NPrinting web console. So we're just going to create an app, and I'm just going to name this sample QVF, something simple, create. And then you actually create the connection to the app. So again, I'm just going to say sample QVF. For the app, I'm going to select the app that I just chose. The source is going to be Qlik Sense. The proxy address is the location of your hub. So I am just going to copy this. And for the app ID, I will open this simple app that I created and copy the app ID. The identity is a user that has access to the app. Again, for ease of use, I am just going to select my administrator and then run verification. And as you can see, everything was successful, so I'll go ahead and create. And right now we are basically waiting for the cache and metadata to connect successfully. So we'll just wait here for a moment while it connects. So you'll see it go from a generating status and then to a successful status if it is able to basically create the app connection and obtain all the metadata. So as you can see here, the connection was successful on all the engines. Okay, so our next step is to actually create a report. So we will go ahead and create a report. I'm just going to give it the title of sample report. We'll choose our report type next. I will just choose HTML. For the app, we will choose the sample QVF app that we chose earlier. Now here is where you have to ensure that the report is enabled for on-demand. All you would do is select this second option where it asks to enable on-demand and the API report generation. Everything else we will just leave as default. So we'll create. And we will go ahead and edit our template just to have it have some type of data on it when running the report. This is when NPrinting Designer will open. Again, this is where you can verify that the version in use is the same version as server and engine. So what we'll do is we will just add our images. I created a bar chart and a line chart, so we'll just drag them to the report. If you would like, you could preview your report at this time to ensure that it looks the way you would like, and then you can save and close. So now we will go ahead and go to our Qlik Sense app, and we will edit the sheet to create the reporting on demand extension button. So all we'll do is click the edit, and go to Custom Objects. And what we're looking for is actually under the Qlik Dashboard bundle, and it's entitled this On-Demand Reporting button. So we will just scroll this onto our app. Again, you can customize this as you see fit for your organization. I'm just going to put here on printing on demand. And then you can also have a button label if you would like. So we'll just type on demand here. And as you can see, that displayed on the button. Next, you will actually put in your Qlik NPrinting server connection. So if we go back to our web console, I can just copy and grab this address, which will include your fully qualified domain name. And then if you hit enter, it'll refresh. This is where you can choose your sample QVF and your connection. Then you will actually go into your report configuration. And this is where you would go and select your report. So we will create the sample report that I selected earlier and do HTML. After you configure your button, you can just click on it to then obtain your report output. This is where your report will generate. And as you can see, it is available for download. So we'll just click on the download button. It creates this .zip folder under your downloads. And here we can just double click and open the report. And here's our report with the line chart and the bar graph. If there are any error messages or issues obtaining the report, what you could check, like I said, are not only the user permissions and to ensure that the report has the on-demand checkbox checked, but you can also check your trusted origins, which are found in admin settings and the on-demand option. So this is where you can add your Qlik NPrinting server and your Qlik Sense server. I went ahead and added not only the host name, but the fully qualified domain name as well. Depending on if you have any different infrastructure set up, you may want to add the IP addresses as well. But since we are just using single nodes, I just went ahead and added the host names and the fully qualified domain names. And that's how you basically configure the Qlik Sense Reporting on Demand extension button that allows you to create real-time reports from Qlik NPrinting. So if there are any issues with configuring the button where you run into any error messages, there are a couple of troubleshooting tools that you can use. The first are the Qlik NPrinting web engine logs. We'll go back onto that virtual server. The NPrinting logs are located under the C program data NPrinting logs. And this is where the web engine log is located. And this will show if there are any errors with the filters, basically when creating your report. You can also open the developer tools in Google Chrome or Internet Explorer. So if there are any issues when running your report, you can open the DevTools, which are actually found here. If you go into Google Chrome and click the three dots and go to More Tools, DevTools, and then select the Network tab, this will show if there are any errors with the selected values, basically if there are any discrepancies between the Qlik NPrinting filters and the Qlik Sense filters. If you look at the screen grabs below, this image was shown when there was a conflicting filter in the NPrinting filter versus the Qlik Sense filter. And as you can see here, there was an issue basically getting the output. You'll see a failed to load resource with a status of 500 internal server error. And then when you drill down to the request payload, this will then show you the discrepancy where there is a selected count, but there's no values available to basically run the report. So these are just two different items you can use for troubleshooting as to if there are any error messages coming back from the button that you had just configured. So in summary, today we talked about a few things with configuring the button. The first is the SSL conversion process. This is a link to the knowledge article that I shared. This is also available on help.qlik.com, but this will go ahead and take you through the process on the conversion and how to remove the password so NPrinting can use the certificate. Again, NPrinting will not be able to use password on the private key, so you would need to run these commands in order to remove it manually. If you do want to use multiple URLs or aliases, they do need to be added into the certificate. Qlik NPrinting desktop icons use the server name and not the fully qualified domain name. So after you get through the process, if you use the NPrinting Web Console desktop shortcut and you're wondering why it still says not secure, just make sure that you're using the fully qualified domain name, because once you do that, you'll then see that it is secure. Ensure the users and the reports have proper permissions. Ensure that the trusted origins have been added as per your NPrinting and Sense server host names and fully qualified domain names. And lastly, just ensure that if you are receiving any error messages, you can go ahead and open the DevTools and look at the web engine logs from NPrinting to see what exactly is occurring in the background.
Okay, everyone, it's time for Q&A. Please submit your questions in the Q&A panel on the left side of your On24 console. Eva, which question would you like to address first?
So we have a question here that states, how does Qlik View NPrinting differ from Qlik Sense NPrinting on demand? And basically, it's just being used with if you're using Qlik View or Qlik Sense. The Qlik View NPrinting on demand has been around for quite a long time. And from what you are probably familiar with, there is a separate installation for Qlik View NPrinting on demand. That is typically, so if we just go to NPrinting 19, here you'll see Qlik NPrinting on demand add-on.exe. This is only for use with Qlik View, not Qlik Sense. So you do not need this at all if you're only using NPrinting and Qlik Sense together. Just to reiterate, you would get the installation from Qlik Sense from the dashboard bundle. For Qlik View, you would just go ahead and install this add-on onto your server that hosts your Qlik View access point. But that was a good question. Thank you. So next question. Do you need to restart the machine after setting up the certificates? I'm assuming that you're referring to the SSL certificates for NPrinting. You would only need to restart the Qlik NPrinting web engine service. You would not need to restart the server. Here's a very good question. It asks if there is a specific order that you should restart your Qlik NPrinting services. I can go ahead and show that by going back to our server. What's really nice about Qlik NPrinting is the way the services are in alphabetical order. That is actually the order that you stop and start them. So with NPrinting, you always have to ensure that the database service is stopped last but started first. What I mean by that is you would go ahead and stop the engine, the scheduler, the web engine, the messaging, and then the repo service in that order. Then when you start them, you just go from the bottom up. So you would start the repo service, the messaging service, the web engine, the scheduler, and the engine. So a good way to remember NPrinting, it's when you're stopping, go from the top to the bottom. When you're restarting, go from the bottom up. But thank you, that was good. Okay, so let's see. Currently, we're using Qlik NPrinting 16.9 for Qlik View. Can we use the same version of NPrinting for Qlik Sense to generate PDF reports? So in order to use the Qlik Sense on-demand reporting extension, you do need to be on November 2018 or later for both Qlik Sense and Qlik NPrinting. Here's another question. I've been experiencing issues with the on-demand button, and according to our IT department, they state this is a bug. Will this be fixed soon? I just need a little bit more information as to what error message you're seeing. As shown in the troubleshooting steps, if you're able to run the dev tools or look at the engine logs, this might pinpoint the issue as far as why you're seeing these errors. If you see an internal server error, again, that could be caused by a filter issue. If there is a certificate issue, you will actually see a certificate failure in the dev tools where it cannot pinpoint what certificate you're using as far as for Qlik Sense and Qlik NPrinting. But without a little bit more information, it's hard to decipher which bug you're referring to. Let's see. Here's a question asking, what is the best way to automate users between Qlik Sense and Qlik NPrinting? NPrinting does allow you to have LDAP users. You can use Active Directory or Excel. There's a number of different sources you can use. You can find this information on help.qlik.com. But stated earlier in the presentation, the user does need to exist in Qlik Sense and Qlik NPrinting, and they do need to have the proper role assigned to create the on-demand reports in Web Console. So, like I said, this would be up to your infrastructure on how best to create your users, but just ensure that they are in both applications and that they have the necessary role assigned to them. Okay. So here's a question about users are being asked to enter their NPrinting credentials twice after logging in to Qlik Sense and clicking the NPrinting on demand button. This actually has to do with either your group policy or your internet or Google Chrome settings. So this is a really great question if you're being asked to authenticate twice when clicking on the button once logged in to Qlik Sense. We do have a knowledge article. Let me just do a quick search. Oops. Okay, so here's the article, article 49987. So here is where you can go ahead and ensure that your internet settings are set up correctly. You would just go to Security, Local Intranet, click Sites and Advanced, and then ensure that these options are selected. And you can also find information about IWA the IWA settings are found on Article 42375. So basically, again, you would just have to go into Internet Explorer, Tools, Options, Security, Trusted Sites, Custom Level. So if we do that in here, we just have to open Internet Explorer. So Internet Options. And then we go to Security, and when that comes up, we go to Trusted Sites and Custom Level, and it should be all the way towards the bottom, for user authentication, we want the automatic login with current username and password. So then you select that and just hit OK, change the settings, and then you would add the site to your trusted site depending on your NPrinting and Qlik Sense URLs then could be added here. And Google Chrome will use the same settings in Internet Explorer. With Firefox, there is a little bit different setup options, but that is also found in the article of 42375. But that was a very good question. I know I've seen that before. Like I said, just by updating the settings on Internet Explorer or group policy, that is how you can actually bypass that second login.
Okay, Eva, we have time for one more question.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, this last one has to deal with performance issues. The question is, are there performance issues by enabling on-demand NPrinting for big enterprises? As long as you have the proper RAM and CPU usage as far as for your NPrinting engine and servers, and as long as NPrinting and Qlik Sense are installed on separate servers, you should be fine. You can go ahead and double check your settings. If we go to help.qlik.com and then we select NPrinting, and we'll just look at the April 2019 release. But if we do a search here for requirements, and here it'll show system requirements for designer, server, engine. We'll just select server for right now. Here are the platforms required. Always ensure that you have a multi-core processor, 8 gigs minimum memory, 500 meg minimum to install. But again, I would just ensure that you're at least meeting the minimum requirements, and if needed, you might need extra Qlik NPrinting engines depending on the size of your apps and if you're in a multi-node environment. But that was a very good question. Okay, and I think that that was it, so thank you very much.
Great! Thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this session. And thank you to Eva for presenting. We always appreciate getting experts like Eva to share with us. Here's our legal disclaimer. And thank you once again. Have a great rest of your day.